So, speaking as a millennial who really never grew out of watching animated films, they're in a rough place right now. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. So, I waited a couple of weeks after the release of Pixar's Elio to start talking about this because I wanted to be sure that we weren't going to be in another Elemental situation. Elemental, which was Pixar's movie from 2 years ago, was initially declared a flop, but actually had like really good legs and stayed in theaters for a while. And by the time it was done with its run, had a respectable return. It just didn't start out as big as Pixar usually does. Not only did Elio start out worse than Elemental did, its drop off week to week has also been worse. And with that now solidified, I want to talk about the current state of animated feature films. Now, this is going to be by necessity restricted to, well, basically the US, but I was going to say Western animation, Western markets, because I'm really in no position to talk about what is or what isn't going on in, say, Japan with anime films and the like. I've got no place to say anything about that. So I am going to be talking about things that are made for and aimed at the American and English speaking market, not necessarily made in America. A lot of animation is outsourced, at least components of it. So even trying to track that down is a mess. But I think you know what I'm talking about. Pixar, Disney, DreamWorks, even Paramount and Warner Brothers and Sony still have their stuff that they put out, but it's not doing okay. Original animated films are becoming a rarity. And while I had no particular interest in seeing it because the trailers really didn't appeal to me at all, I was keeping an eye on Elio because if it did badly, and it is, I was really worried about what that would mean for the current future of animated features, especially theatrically released animated features, but animated features in general. Because Pixar has already been pushed in the direction of sequels. Now, like to be clear, sequels were part of Pixar's model fairly early on. Toy Story 2 happened relatively early, but the sequels used to be the minority of what they did. Yeah, you got Toy Story 2, later Toy Story 3, 4, and stuff like The Incredibles got a sequel way, way, way later. Finding Nemo got a sequel way, way, way later. Inside Out, not quite as long a wait, but like not immediately. These things didn't seem to be built with sequels in mind. And in the meantime, we had a ton of other new original stuff happening in between these movies, and that isn't really happening anymore. And when you look at the release of something like Inside Out 2 and compare it to Elio, why would the executives continue to back original projects? And it's not just Pixar. Disney has been striking out with its animated films that are original as well. To be clear, yes, Disney does own Pixar, but Pixar Animation has its output, and Disney Film Animation has its output. Though they are separate studios under the umbrella of Disney, and they are worth kind of talking about slightly separately because, well, the Disney animated film department has tried. They've been trying to do some original stuff. We got Strange World, which tanked. We have Wish, which I don't know anyone who's seen it. And I've not heard of anyone who did see it and liked it. Encanto was kind of the outlier in terms of success, but even that, it saw more success on streaming than anything else. That's partially for being on the tail end of people still being nervous about going back into theaters. That's true. But in the wake of the pandemic, what seems to have happened, especially with Disney's output, is that thanks to putting stuff like Luca and Raya on the streaming service Disney Plus, either immediately or fairly soon after a theatrical run, which is what happened with Encanto, they were kind of training audiences that this stuff's just going to be on streaming pretty soon anyways. And I also throw in Soul and Turning Red and all that. Lightyear was supposed to be Pixar's big return to the cinema. That didn't go well. And to get people excited enough to go out to the theater, it needed to be something that they already knew, i.e., a sequel or a live action remake. Now, like, those haven't all been doing well. Snow White one tanked, but Lilo and Stitch did really well, and it's getting a sequel, apparently. And Moana 2, despite being a repackaged TV show, did really well. Going by numbers, the message is very clear for a company like Disney. Sequels make the big bucks. So that's what needs to be going into theaters, because theatrical release is more expensive anyways. And I wish I could say it's only Disney. Even DreamWorks, who has been doing some good output, since 2020, they've only really done 3 original animated films, those being The Bad Guys, Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, and The Wild Robot. As much as I love Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, it's not only a spinoff, it's a sequel from a spinoff. We had another Boss Baby, another Croods, another Trolls. Apparently there was something related to the Spirit Horse movie? There was another Kung Fu Panda. There was Dogman, which I'm not going to count as original because it's effectively a spinoff of Captain Underpants, at the very least done in the exact same style. They've now started to dip into the live-action remake. And apparently there's something called Orion in the Dark from last year. I've literally never heard of this thing. I'm literally just looking at it going, what the hell is that? So I wouldn't even count that one because, like, was it original? Well, yeah, it was a new property, but it was dumped on Netflix and I never freaking heard of it. There was clearly no faith in it. So with now the 2 biggest, we're just looking at this increasing lean into sequel, into remake, into milk what we have, don't build anything new. And to be fair, a decent amount of the new stuff that they try to do, Disney, Pixar, and DreamWorks, haven't landed as well as they might have wanted, even the ones who have done relatively well. Yeah, sure, The Wild Robot did good numbers, but it didn't do Kung Fu Panda 4 numbers. And I've never seen Kung Fu Panda 4, and I don't know anyone who has. And I know that sounds like I'm just repeating a joke. I'm actually serious. I don't know anyone who's seen that movie, but it made more money. And on their upcoming docket, it's Bad Guys 2, Shrek 5, and a second How to Train Your Dragon live action movie. Now, in terms of Pixar's upcoming slate, next year we are supposed to get Toy Story 5 for some reason. And also something called Hoppers, which is probably too far along to cancel. But there's something called Gato, tentatively penciled for 2027. I wouldn't be shocked if that gets canceled. And after that, it's more sequels for The Incredibles and for Coco, though we don't have release dates on those, not even years yet. And we don't have anything announced for further out than that, and I would not be shocked if the non-success of Elio is something that pushes Disney to instruct Pixar to do more sequels and less original stuff. And the thing is, I can't even necessarily say that it would have been a good thing if Elio had succeeded, because there's behind-the-scenes drama with Elio. There was a lot that was removed. In specific, there was a fair amount of queer coding of the lead character. Now, to be clear, the character wasn't explicitly gay. He is young enough to have not really have those kinds of feelings to sort that out. But there would have been a certain amount of gay coding in terms of things like an interest in fashion, having like posters of male pop stars up in his room and things like that. And these were things that were taken from the actual life experience and the sense of feeling a little bit detached and a little bit separate from other people for reasons like this that the original director had. And I say original director because after what is reportedly a whole bunch of notes to strip all that stuff out, that director left. Adrian Molina said flat out it was supposed to be a very personal coming-of-age story inspired by his own childhood. But after all the notes and all the changes, he's now just working on Coco 2, a sequel. And they brought in other people instead. And the word that is leaked out about all this is, yeah, they took signifiers and personality and uniqueness about the character in the story. They took it out and they didn't replace it with anything. So ultimately, they ended up with a movie that wasn't really about anything. Now, I haven't seen it, so I can't really speak to the end result, but my point being that if Elio had succeeded, yeah, it might have helped to validate original films at Pixar, but unfortunately, it also would have validated that level of studio interference. Reportedly, what happened was an earlier cut of Elio was shown, and the test audiences responded very positively until they were asked, would you go to the theater to see this? And when the response was that nobody was like, yeah, we definitely go to the theater, that the executives panicked. But we'll circle back to what I said before. Disney in specific has kind of been training its audience that they can wait for streaming with this stuff, with a lot of it, especially with the original stuff. But the decision by the executives wasn't put in the context of how audiences currently feel about original animated films from Pixar and Disney in general, but instead made it specifically as if Elio was the problem. And again, look, maybe the movie wasn't that great before, and maybe the notes made it better. I will never know. But with the reports being that they freaked out when people didn't say that they were going to rush out to the theater, that is not, strictly speaking, this movie's fault. I don't know if this was as under-marketed as Strange World was. I felt like it was because I didn't see a lot, although I've heard from other people who said they got a fair amount of marketing pushed at them for Elio in the last couple of weeks prior to it coming out, but there wasn't a lot of buildup. There wasn't a lot of push for it. At least it doesn't feel like there was. And part of me wonders if... Okay, I'm not going to go so far as to say the executives want this to fail so that it validates them pushing for more sequels. I am going to say that they definitely had a plan in place for what to do if it failed. And they're probably not upset that it failed. I feel like I can say that safely. And things aren't looking too much better other places either. I mean, Warner Brothers, good grief, they have no idea what they're doing right now. They did a follow-up to Space Jam, and that went basically direct to streaming. They did a Looney Tunes movie that barely got any push or release in the theater at all, and as a result, basically nobody saw. They completely shelved another one with the Coyote versus Acme stuff, though that is going to come out, but somebody else is releasing it after a year of negotiations to claw it away from Warner Brothers. And what the heck else is there? War of the Rohirrim, the freaking Ashcan movie, to ensure that they can keep the theatrical release rights for the Lord of the Rings? Yeah, Warner Brothers is useless in this conversation. I guess it's worth touching briefly on their big upcoming planned release for Cat in the Hat next year, which, I'm sorry, looks terrible. But I'm also of the opinion that every single adaptation of Dr. Seuss into a feature-length movie has been varying degrees of terrible. It's just a question of exactly what flavor of terrible we're dealing with. None of them are any good. So, yeah, to heck with Warner Brothers. Paramount's going to be releasing the Smurfs later, which also looks terrible. And I don't just mean it looks like a bad movie. I mean, the animation looks really cheap. This is true of the Cat in the Hat trailer as well. There's a lot going on, but there's something about the quality of the animation. It just looks cheap. And unfortunately, at time of recording, I cannot confirm whether or not they are cheap because the budgets haven't been released on these things yet. But even the fact that Paramount is releasing the Smurfs at all, look, at this point, Paramount Animation, when it comes to theatrical releases, basically SpongeBob movies and stuff like Smurfs. Why Smurfs? Because it's a known name. And heaven forbid we cultivate any new talent in making any new original ideas whatsoever. What the heck is there to even begin to look forward to? Well, there was this. K-pop Demon Hunters was a salve on my soul. That movie, if you haven't seen it, is mwah. It's so good. And I'm probably going to end up talking about it again because I plan at some point later this year to also talk about the state of musical movies. But Oh boy. That movie has so much life and love poured into it. Is it a perfect movie? No, literally nothing is. But you can tell every second of that was lovingly crafted by people who cared. Can I be honest about part of why I had no interest in seeing Elio? I saw the trailers and I'm like, that looks very generic, especially for Pixar. And granted, I definitely have no interest in the Smurfs, but that's generic as hell. There's no soul, there's no passion, there is no love of the art that I can see in these supposed works of art. Holy cow, is there love in K-pop Demon Hunters. And honestly, Sony's output has been pretty dang good. We've got Sony to thank for the Spider-Verse movies, but that also brings us to another thing I don't want to let slip by. As much as I've enjoyed some of the output from Sony, actually, honestly, most of it, even their debut, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, was way better than it had any right to be. But word on the inside of actual animators working there, not the directors, but the ground level animators, is that it is a soul-crushing place to work. That really came to the forefront in the wake of Across the Spider-Verse. Hopefully that film's sequel will not see the same degree of crunch just because they know eyes are on them. But while I can't verify it, I have caught wind of some unpleasant working conditions for the animators on K-pop Demon Hunters 2. So I don't want anyone to think I'm saying Sony Animation is our savior here. When it comes to the topic of more original things, or at least more original approaches, Sony Animation does not have the back catalog of Disney or Pixar or DreamWorks. And as a result, they've had to come up with new stuff or more original takes on it. Because yeah, Spider-Man's out there, but they couldn't just do a straight Spider-Man story. They were already doing that in live action. It had to be something else. So I think Sony taking some of the big swings it has more to do with the fact that they need to, otherwise they're not going to stand out at all because they don't have the back catalog to lean on. Really, the only thing that they've been able to milk to death was the Hotel Transylvania movies. And the last one of those didn't do so hot. And so their output, at least as far as the end result films, I feel has been better lately than the others, but it's because they kind of have to be. I just would really love to hear that the working conditions there definitively got better, and not just on the Spider-Verse movies, like across the board. I'd really love to hear that, because otherwise I have to keep putting these asterisks on all these amazing movies that I otherwise really love. It feels like it's becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy at places like Disney and Pixar, where less and less care and effort and faith in artists is being put in the new original properties, and so they do worse, and so they get less faith in them and have less support, and they do worse again. And then they just give us stuff like Moana 2, which I think I said after I saw it, I said it was fine. It's kind of trash. They're not trying. They're just looking at what makes us the most money. And what makes them the most money is sequels and remakes. So while I can point to certain movies that are holding on to the spirit that I love in animation, because what is beautiful about animation is you can do stuff and present us stuff that nothing else can in ways that other things can't. And just giving us this unique feel and energy that you can capture in animation that you're just not gonna get any other way. But so much of the animated output lately isn't doing any of that. And the ones that are, a lot of them are on places like Netflix, which is hard for me to get excited about because Netflix is fickle. And I'm not going to praise it as our savior of animation when I can't trust them to keep doing it. They're doing it for now. They're helping. They're helping ensure that there's something out there. But it's really rough. Passion is expensive. Backing the passion of artists is expensive. And animation studios seem to be interested in doing that less and less and less. They find what works and they just drill it into the ground. And that's not even necessarily a new problem. Disney arguably started having that problem back in the 90s with the Disney Renaissance. They were like, ooh, princesses are a formula. And we ended up with some hot nonsense like Pocahontas. Or, there was the who knows how many direct-to-video sequels that also just drove stuff into the ground. But At the same time, they didn't get that big a push. You could ignore those. But the theatrical releases are increasingly dominated by sequels. The idea that a director had passion and had hope to tell a personal story with Elio, and so much of what he put into it was stripped out that he left the project to work on Coco 2. And the first Coco's good, don't get me wrong, but I don't mean to project onto somebody who I don't know, but that can't help but feel a bit like a resignation, like, oh, okay, well, I'll stop trying to do new stuff then. Animation can be a grind. A lot of visual arts can be a grind, but animation, almost especially, can be a grind. And grinding the passion out of the artists is going to be a loss for the entire medium. And I cannot help but feel like that's a lot of what's going on. And again, I don't want to say the sequels can't be good. Some of them have been. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, real good. The How to Train Your Dragon sequels, both quite good. Those are a bit older now. I'm not sure how relevant they are, except they're going to be remaking the sequel. I actually don't know. Like, they're going to do a second live action How to Train Your Dragon. I assume they're just going to remake the second film. Who knows? I understand that this all exists to make money. But seeing studios that used to have at least some balance of, yeah, here's a sequel, but also let's try this. Here's a spinoff, but let's try this. Now just doing the spinoffs, the sequels, the remakes, and less and less and less and less of trying anything else. It's a little depressing. Now, I've been focusing on feature animation, which doesn't really have an independent scene, but independent animation is out there, and it's actually thriving right now, especially right here on YouTube, because of how many studios who have been able to get pilot episodes off the ground and then were able to make more thanks to the support they generated. The real big success story here is Hell of a Boss and Has Been Hotel, but there's also The Amazing Digital Circus, and Lackadaisy, and Gaslight District. And while by necessity these all have to be TV shows because they have to be able to make smaller chunks, they can't really get the financing to make full movies, this is the stuff I think people should really be watching out for if you want to see new life breathed into animation. I'm not saying you have to like it. If it's not to your taste, fair enough. But if you care about animation as an art form, this is the stuff I think you should be giving a shot to. Way more than the latest remake or sequel from the big studios. What's your favorite animated film to come out in the last, let's say, 4 years? Mine's Nimona, for the record, though K-Pop Demon Hunters might come in second. Well, no. Ooh. Cross the Spider-Verse. I don't know. There's been some good ones. But what's your favorite in the last 4 years? Whatever your thoughts might be, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Let's bond and share the stuff that keeps our passion alive for this medium. Patreon is what pays the bills. Any amount that you can help is really, really does keep me doing this. This is my living. But even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. Those all help. Don't worry too much about it, though. What I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You're the council, and I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lutfullah, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Movie Turtle, Oliver B, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Mary Mello, Becky Sparks, Loki Eris, Tracy Scrabbit, Pal Barabajoggle, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. Don't worry, the rats are all fine, but my rat wrangler is not here right now, and I thought we could have Archie say hi. Or not.